We're standing at the entrance to our newest exhibit, Icons of Science Fiction. Icons of Science Fiction was organized here at EMP. I'm the curator of it, and the purpose is to explore the genre of science fiction in all of its forms. So movies, books, TV shows, even video games, comics, manga, anime, anywhere you can find science fiction, we want to talk about it here. And one of the main reasons we're doing that is because, well, two reasons. Science fiction is super cool and enjoyable, but also science fiction is a tentpole of popular culture these days. Science fiction is everywhere. It used to be it was like a niche genre, a specialized thing, and only certain nerds and weirdos were into it. But nowadays, everyone knows about Star Wars, everyone knows Star Trek, and you even have things like Nike footwear does science fiction commercials, Volkswagen uses science fiction to sell their cars. Science fiction is everywhere. And with this exhibition, I want to give people a chance to explore it in all the different ways. Science fiction can teach kids now how to move quickly with change. Science fiction makes you think about possible futures. Obviously, not everything that happens in science fiction comes true. That's a good thing in a lot of cases. But when you watch something like The Matrix, or you read a cool novel and you think about, well, what if the world were that way? How would I react? What would I do? That's like training. That's like practice. You practice in your mind for different possibilities, and probably none of those possibilities will actually happen, but I think it gives people a mental flexibility, a brain plasticity to just deal with life and growing up. So we call it Icons of Science Fiction for a couple reasons. One is we are displaying literal icons, things like Captain Kirk's chair from the original Star Trek TV series, or Darth Vader's lightsaber from Empire Strikes Back. But also an icon of science fiction could be a creator, a famous author or a filmmaker or an artist or a special effects person. Icons of Science Fiction is about all those things. And what I'm doing is I use those icons, those cool things to look at, those creators, writers, to talk about certain themes. So the exhibition is organized around what I call big weird questions. And they're questions like, what would happen if we fought a war with aliens? Or what if I had superpowers? Or what if we could explore the stars? This is what science fiction does. It asks these questions, and then all the stories provide all kinds of different answers. One of the neat things about science fiction is there's no one answer to any of these questions. In fact, every story will tell conflicting different answers. But it's through these questions that secretly, here's the secret, science fiction isn't just exploring fantasy worlds, it's actually exploring our worlds. I think that science fiction is what some people call a warped mirror to our world. You take a story like Battlestar Galactica. In the latest incarnation, it's a very serious war story. It's kind of intense, and really was a direct commentary on the wars in the Middle East that were happening at the same time the show was being made. But those topics might have been a little too uncomfortable to talk about so soon, so directly. So by taking them one step removed, setting it in space, making the enemies into robots and things like that, it makes it a little safer and a little easier to talk about. And science fiction, I mean, anyone who tells me science fiction is not about the real world, I would say, actually science fiction is very much about the real world. It's a way of looking at the real world through this fantasy lens, through this otherworldly lens. We live in a science fictional world now, there's no question. I always have the sense that I'm living in the future. There's this technology around me that honestly is cooler and more powerful than some of the technology I saw on Star Trek when I was a kid. And there's modes of communication, and there's the internet and ways to gather information. It's a completely science fictional universe that we're in right now. For me personally, I got into science fiction as a boy, as a reader. I didn't know what science fiction was just that when my mother asked me what kind of books she'd like me to get at the library, I would say the weird ones. I was just more interested in other worlds, other kinds of beings. So I read a lot of Robert Heinlein juvenile novels, things like Tunnel in the Sky or Starman Jones, and then progressed on to, the classics, Isaac Asimov, Ray Bradbury, Ursula Le Guin was big for me. And then when I was 10 years old, Star Wars came out, and that's it. I was done, hooked for life. Because suddenly Star Wars brought this visual element, this incredibly exciting, especially to a little kid, dynamic, amazingly well-imagined, fascinatingly deep world. You sensed with Star Wars that beyond the edge of the screen, beyond where the characters were doing their thing, there was just endless possibilities for more stories, more cool worlds, more stuff. And I couldn't possibly explain why, but I love that, and it intrigues me. Then it was later in life that I started to see, oh, this isn't about just pure out there stuff. When they're talking about robots who are trying to find their feelings, they're talking about people. Or when they're talking about aliens that have certain traits, they're really talking about people with those traits. And I started to see that science fiction could teach me about life, it could teach me about other people, it could teach me how to navigate in the world.